Welcome back, friends. It is a great day to get better. This is another episode of Becoming Undone, the podcast for those who dare bravely, risk mightily, and grow relentlessly. I'm your host, Toby Brooks, and I'll be your tour guide as we invite new guests each week to examine how high achievers can transform from falling apart to falling into place. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." For the high achievers among us, the purpose and the enormity of our why can pull so hard and so relentlessly that we're willing to endure almost any how. Now, competitive athletes in particular are often celebrated for the singleness of focus that they have and for the commitment to making their dreams become reality. But sooner or later, those dreams inevitably have to end. For many, those days, months, or even years that follow a career in sports, they can be empty and painful, with a search for new purpose common in most. Sometimes that one thing within the high achiever that drives them toward elite performance, at least in retrospect, it's the very thing that makes it almost impossible to enjoy the journey while they're on it. However, for those who ultimately recognize that their task remains unfinished, that same drive and passion can fuel new successes. It's those who discover that the end of a chapter isn't the same as the end of a story who find their true significance. Take Nazareth, Pennsylvania native Cara Meyer, for instance. Sure, she might have spent 2 years on the U.S. women's gymnastics team, beating out millions of other aspiring young athletes in the process. She finished 7th one year at the USA Gymnastics Nationals, appearing on ESPN one day, and then sheepishly brushing off questions about it back in her high school classroom the next. She might have even spent a moment of her life just a tantalizing millimeter away from the Olympic stage that she had dreamed of her entire life, only to fall just short. But for Cara, it was the 6 who finished in front of her, not the million plus behind her, and the things that weren't rather than the things that were that seemed to consume her efforts and her energy. In episode 2, Perspective, we get to hear Cara share her inspiring and introspective story with bravery and vulnerability. Becoming Undone is a podcast for those who dare bravely, risk mightily, and grow relentlessly. Each week, I invite a new guest to examine how high achievers can transform from falling apart to falling into place. And this week, I have a special treat. In addition to being a world-class athlete, a rock star of a mom, and just all-around great gal, Cara Meyer is one of the most decorated gymnasts in the University of Arizona history. She now serves as a life skills mentor and is assistant director of medical insurance at the University of Arizona in the Department of Intercollegiate Athletics. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Communication. And in a previous life, she was 2001 Regional Gymnast of the Year, 2-time All Pac-10 gymnast, and one of the few members of Arizona's Ring of Honor. She was an elite gymnast prior to college and entertained scholarship offers from University of Georgia, Nebraska, UCLA, the who's who of college gymnastics. She was also a member of the 1994 USA Gymnastics national team and was an alternate for the 1994 World Championship team. So, Cara, first of all, thank you for being here.
Absolutely, Toby. You did some good research there.
It's part of what I do. And it's funny because most of the people that I want to interview, we all grew up in a pre-internet age. So this information's hard to find on. We're hard to Google.
Yes,
allow me to include myself in that category. But people my age and a little younger kind of hit this sweet spot where we were doing things when the internet wasn't recording it. And sometimes that's for better and sometimes that's for worse.
Completely agree with that.
Yeah. So we'll start off, the question I always begin with, start at the beginning, wherever that is for you.
Well, I actually called my mom about an hour ago just to make sure I had my story right from my memories, and where I would always say, I would be shopping with my mom as a toddler and doing flips and cartwheels. And my mom said I was climbing the shelves of ShopRite in Pennsylvania. And she's like, this kid's going to hurt herself. I need to find a place for her to get out her energy and get instructions so she does not hurt anyone else or herself. So I think I was around 4.5, and she took me to the local YMCA in Nazareth, Pennsylvania. And the age to start there was 6. And I was 4.5. And she begged them, please take my child because she's going to hurt herself. And I need somewhere to take her to get out this energy and to get good instruction. And they said, sure. So they took me. I'm not quite sure the time frame, but a few months later or so, they asked her to stay after, the class. And she's like, oh no, what did she do? Did she get like, oh gosh, here we go. And they said, listen, she's a little bit more advanced than some of these school age kids in this class. There are a couple places close to here that, we think you should maybe go check out. So fortunately, there was a really high caliber gymnastics club about 30 minutes from Nazareth. And she took me over there, and I remember sitting in the balcony watching this 20,000 square foot facility and seeing all these people just flipping around and all these kids. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And shortly after that, we signed up for whatever classes were next, and kind of, I guess the rest is history. And I just loved it. And it was, I guess, meant to be for me to be a gymnast and just to go on that path.
So a moment to interject here. I first met Kara as the athletic trainer for the Arizona women's gymnastics team in 1998, where she was soon to be a sophomore, and she had come off a stellar freshman season. It's remarkable for me to hear her tell her story of knowing that gymnastics was in her future from the age of 4.5. Just the purpose and the proficiency that she had plotted her course for what would become the next 20 years of her life. So you started off from scratch as a child and rapidly ascended through the ranks of gymnastics. What do you recall about kind of your pre-elite career?
So I feel like pre-elite career, it's just fun, just going into the gym and, in the early on, it was a couple of days a week, I'd say maybe once. And then eventually I got a little bit better. And then I was on like a little mini pre-team where maybe it was a couple of days a week. And then it progressed from there where they had just different levels. Like it was a pre-team, or then it was maybe a compulsory, which means like it's the beginning levels of team and competitive gymnastics. And it was just fun, like all of my memories back then was just flipping around and just, like being with all these other girls and just being in this big facility, watching the older gymnasts across on the other side of the gym, doing all these huge, big flips and listening to their floor music. And, you'll never forget the smell of a gymnastics facility ever. So it's like just all of those things mixed in. And then just from there, like, it just became this thing I did. And then it just progressed up to team. And I think by 5th grade, I was my first airplane trip to a big invitational in Reno, Nevada. And then I think from there, it just kind of took off, so yeah. Early on, it was fun. It was flipping, and it was just what I did.
That's awesome. Who would you say Kara was back then? Describe her aesthetic. Like, what did she want in life? What did she look like? What did she listen to?
She was very, very skinny. She was very, I think, just competitive. I had an older brother, and I grew up in kind of a smaller community where I just hung with my brother's friends, and there was a lot of boys, and we played every sport under the sun. We made up our own sports, and I wanted to beat them. He was 3 years older than me, and I just wanted to be them. My mom would joke around that I wanted to be my brother, not just like be like him. I wanted to be him. And so I think that made me tough.
Tough indeed. Kara and all of her gymnastics teammates, for that matter, were some of the toughest athletes I ever worked with. I routinely saw her push through conditions that athletes in other sports would have taken days off for, but not Kara. She was consistently one of the hardest workers in the gym, and that drive came from an early age.
I was right in there. I was playing kickball, I was playing football, we were playing baseball. We would make our own fishing poles, and we'd go down to the creek, which we said, but it's the creek, and we'd fish. And I just was very involved in life, where you just took off, and it made me very tough because I wanted to beat all of the boys. I was very competitive. Elementary school, I wanted to be the one that did the most push-ups and did the most sit-ups in gym class and PE. And, they would pick me to like be the example of, this is how you do this. And it was like, okay, cool. Also a little embarrassing. I never really liked being the focus of attention, but it was like, okay, but I know how to do this. Like, I'm good. I'm comfortable. I just feel like I was really lighthearted. I like to make people laugh. Also a little bit shy, I think, in some ways. If I wasn't comfortable in a situation, I just kind of stayed focused on what I knew.
This is remarkable to me. Here's a young athlete who's clearly head and shoulders above her peers. She loves competition. She loves winning, but she's not comfortable in the spotlight. She's not necessarily happy being the center of attention. And it's that nagging question of whether or not I'm truly good enough that can oftentimes lead high achievers to their next achievement.
But yeah, I feel like those are the memories from young Kara that I would think of. I think back then, just carefree and just lived life.
Yeah. It's funny you describe it that way. For our listeners, Kara and I first crossed paths. I was the athletic trainer for the gymnastics team she was part of at Arizona. And I remember conversations we would have. You and I had a great relationship, hit it off right off the bat, just loved your personality, loved your energy. And you and your husband, who will be a subject of another podcast, he was a member of the baseball team. And I remember how you hung with the baseball team. You were like an honorary member of the Arizona Wildcats baseball team, because it was like you vibed with them in a way that, a female athletics team, like you were more about kind of that dude camaraderie, if you'll allow me to say that. But
absolutely.
I loved that about you, and you guys were like an Arizona athletics power couple back in the day, for sure.
I like to say sometimes I was like mom to some of those baseball players. I kind of feel like I felt like I needed to take care of them in a sense, and I think that's just always been in my being as well, is just to take care of people, make sure everyone's okay. And,
Yeah. We're recording this the day after Halloween. If I recall, you and Mike went as each other for Halloween one year. Is that correct? He was in a leotard, you were in a baseball uniform.
We sure did. He wore one of my USA national team leotards, actually. And I did his hair and I threw a little makeup on him, and I definitely wore Wildcats. I think there was their practice unis possibly, but it was a big hit.
Yeah, for sure. So as you continue to progress through the ranks in gymnastics, and you go from being this rambunctious child who's climbing on the shelves in the supermarket to really starting to materialize some real goals, like, and like you said, getting on an airplane to go to a meet, like it kept getting bigger, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as you approach some of the latter years of level 8, 9, 10, and then eventually elite, in your mind, what were you thinking? Like, where was this career going for you?
So I feel like in the very beginning, in our gym, we had a lot of posters hanging, or a lot of banners, possibly. I don't know back then if they had the banners, but it was known like so-and-so went to this college or this university and got a scholarship. So I feel like that was always the main goal. I feel like from a very young age that I knew intuitively what my parents were spending, time, money, all of those things, leotards, grips, all of the things on this sport that I was passionate about and I loved doing. And I felt this was my way to give back to them, was to get a college scholarship so they wouldn't have to pay for college. I feel like that was the initial goal, was I want to pay my parents back. They're doing so much for me that this is how I can repay them. And that I really stuck to and clung to, even on the hardest days, was where I didn't want to get out of the car to go to practice. I was tired. I was sore. I was stressed out with school or whatever it was. But that's what carried me in the gym almost every day. And then I think as I got a little bit better and I realized it, because I was always my harshest critic, so I never thought I was very good. I think once I made a national team with elite, and it was the big name gymnast that I looked up to or that I would see on TV, when I was like, okay, this could go somewhere else. I could possibly make national team. I could maybe make a world team or an Olympic team. And I feel like one of my gym's mottos was where Olympic dreams come true. So I feel like in the back of your mind, that's always there, regardless if it's said verbally or not. I think that was always a goal too. I wanted to be the best of the best. I wanted to prove to myself and to everyone else that the reason I'm leaving school early and doing all these things and practicing 30 to 36 hours a week and sometimes longer in the summer, that's how I could prove myself to them, was I am going to be the best I can be. And if my name is up there with the greats, then I've done my job and I am worthy of being a gymnast, quote unquote gymnast.
Yeah. I think in a lot of ways, the people who are able to achieve those Olympic dreams, a lot of it's hard work, but a lot of it's just dumb luck. And I can remember I'm a huge Olympics geek. Like, I've always loved the Olympic Games. I can remember being 5 years old, sitting in front of the TV until all hours of the night, watching like men's volleyball or anything. Like, if it was on the Olympics and someone had a Team USA patch on, I wanted to watch it. And so from that earliest age, I can remember kind of doing the Olympics math, like, okay, in 92, I will be 17. I'm doing the math like, no, I'm too young for the 92 games. And this is me. Like, I'm not a competitive gymnast. My sport's basketball. I have 0.0% chance of making the Olympics basketball team, but I'm doing that math. And I'm like, okay, 96 in Atlanta, circle it. That's my Olympics. People my age will be at the games then. By 2000, it's too old. I'm past my prime. But for you, I mean, that was a reality for you. Like, 92 was too soon. 96 was a little late. Like, you made the national team in 94. Talk to me about that process. Like what was your thought process going into like the Barcelona year? And what was your thought process going into it? I mean, that is a critical 4 years. I mean, gymnasts have a narrower window than just about any athlete. And a lot of it, hey, Mom, could you have had me 2 years later? That would have been perfect. Just talk me through that process.
Right. So we had in our gym, we had a gymnast who qualified for the 92 Olympic team. And there was a lot of things going on in gymnastics back then. And so she ended up not being selected for the team, even though she had a great meet, all of things. So the next morning, our gym was devastated. We came in for summer practice and I can't remember if it was camp or not, but we came in and it was devastating. She had made that team. And as a gym, we rallied around her. And for some reason, I don't remember what the thought process was, but we all took a walk. We walked from our gym to, I think, the mayor's office as more of just a statement. You know what I mean? So I feel like in that respect, it was like, gosh, like it can be right there and almost taken away. Our sport is a little tough with that, where yes, it's judging, and also being judged is another topic for another podcast, but it really affects you when your performance isn't a time clock, or it's not a strike zone or an out or a basket. It is a judge who's judging you. And so that also kind of goes into how you react and how you respond in a competition. But for that moment, I think it was an eye opener for all of us. And it almost made you a little hungrier, but it also was like, whoa, so I'm going to put all this work in and it might not pay off anyway. So I think it did give me a different perspective too, where, you have to enjoy it a little bit. Or what is this for a little? So I think the first time I made national team, I believe it was 93, 94 year, competition year. And I was last after our first day of competition, dead last in all of the elites. And we did compulsory. So everyone does the same routine. And it was definitely not my strong suit at all. So then I think it was the next day, it was optionals. And that was where I thrived a little bit more. I could show myself off a little bit more. I was a little more comfortable. And I ended up rallying back and finished 20th, the very last slot on national team. And I almost feel like my coaches didn't believe it. They hadn't seen the final printout. And this woman came around and she's okay, all competitors, like, make sure you get your warm-ups off and you're just in your competition, Leo. You're going to be marched out on the floor. And I feel like it was my coaches or someone was like, why are you taking your warm-up off? And I was like, I don't know, the lady told us to. And I just always follow directions. And it turned out that I was the final slot. I clawed my way back from last. And I feel like I actually haven't thought of that in a really long time. But I clawed my way back from last place to making my first national team with the likes of Dominique Dawes and Shannon Miller and Carrie Strug and Amanda Borden and all these ladies who I watched compete a year or two prior. And it was so awesome to feel that. And it was like, okay, like I can take a deep breath. Like, I'm on national team. This is really cool. You get to wear your national team. They give you your little flip-flops, I think it was, your slides. And then, you get your national team jacket with the embroidery on the side. And you stand there with all, like, it's the pictures you saw in the gymnastics magazines. And it's like, oh my gosh, like my name might be in one of these magazines now. So, but I don't think I took it in then. It was just a little snippet of, okay, I kind of made it a little bit here, but I'm still last.
Did you catch that last little bit? I can hear it in her voice. Kara's proud of herself. She's recalling the fact that she went from being in dead last to making the national team. An incredible feat. But even now, she doesn't quite want to give herself credit because even though she made the team, she was the last to make the team. And friends, that is the double-edged sword of high achievement. We are so critical of ourselves that we don't give ourselves the chance to appreciate the moment, to appreciate the accomplishment. And I know Kara's working on this, but it's tough to hear her be critical of herself even these 2 decades later.
So now I think looking back, it's like I clawed my way back and I made a national team. Whereas then it was like, ooh, a little embarrassing because I'm last place, last one on there. But then I think that also makes you a little hungrier, like, okay, now I've got my foot in the door. I feel good about this. What can I do from here? But it was a different thing, feeling like, oh my gosh, like everything you see in all these magazines you're reading. And, I feel like each sport maybe had a magazine back then. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Now it's more if you see yourself on a website or something, a list. But back then, being in that magazine was just, you get it every month. And it was crazy to think, oh, could I be on the next one?
Yeah, for sure. So when you're standing at the edge of that possibility, like these athletes who were heroes to you a year or two before are now contemporaries, like they're competitors. You're standing toe to toe with these athletes. And gymnastics is so weird because it's an individual sport and it's a team sport all at the same time. And that's a whole nother podcast too. But when you're standing on the edge of that possibility, like, did you allow yourself to have visions or dreams of being on that floor in Atlanta as a member of Team USA, or was it just one competition, one practice at a time?
I kind of thought about that and I'm not sure. I don't know if I allowed myself to have that vision because I still never thought I was good enough. Because with gymnastics, there are the best of the best, the top girls. And I always felt I wasn't toe to toe with them, which is, I'm sure, interesting to hear from your perspective, but I never felt that I was as good as them. I always felt less than. And I don't know where that comes from. I'm assuming because I'm a perfectionist, and if I'm not the best of the best, or maybe I didn't allow myself to believe, which is probably the case, allow myself to believe that I was toe to toe with them. I always found faults with everything I did. I could have done this better. I could have done that better, but I still wouldn't have been as good as, Dominique Dawes. So it's an interesting thing to reflect on because I feel like you just show up to practice the next day. Yeah. You show, maybe in August, I think we got maybe a week off, possibly. It was our only week off throughout the year. And that's kind of when you can recoup and breathe for a second. But I don't know if I ever did. It was like, okay, well, practice is going to start up in a week again. School's going to start. And now here it goes again. We have a little bit of off season and let's see if we can get new skills. And so I feel like it was just an ongoing process where you didn't really get a chance to sit and reflect, because you have next season and what's that going to look like. So I'm not sure if I could ever sit there and be proud. I know that when people would congratulate me or whatever, it was tough for me to say thank you. I'd be like, oh, well, yeah, okay, thanks. I'd get back from competitions and all my classmates said, did you win? Did you win? And I'm going, no. So it was always that just, not a lot of people understood what we were going through. They knew that Kara left early for school. She left early. She left at noon, 12:30 every day. And she went to this place to do some flips. So it was kind of tough to relate a little bit, but I knew that dreaded question was coming. Did you win? Well, no, I did really well. I didn't fall, but I didn't win. So it was kind of always, I don't know if it wasn't really humbling, but it just, you knew that was coming and you knew you were doing this thing that not a lot of people understood, except the people that were going through it with you, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So my background being in basketball, gymnastics was a completely foreign field. It was almost like a minefield in a lot of ways. But every athlete I had worked with up to that point, when I was an athlete myself, like your future was ahead of you. For a college gymnast, in a lot of ways, much of your competitive, like your window of opportunity it's not closed, but it's as in past tense, but it's closing. And for Mike, when he was a little leaguer, he wanted to play in the major leagues, and Arizona was a step toward that. For a college gymnast, being on the Olympic stage is the goal. And then you go to college to pay for school, and that's kind of a nice value added. So when your elite career was kind of winding down and you were looking to make that transition to college gymnastics, were you frustrated then, or did you finally realize that maybe these grandiose dreams might not happen and you're on to the next thing, or did you dwell there for a little bit?
Well, I can back up a little bit. And going back to 94, we had our USA championships and I had a really great meet. I can't remember. I know it's top 15. I can't quite remember.
7th. According to my research, you finished 7th.
That was at World Championship Trials.
Yeah.
So that was at World Team Trials. I finished 7th and I won't ever forget that one. But then it was like, oh my goodness, I qualified for World Team Trials. That's like a huge deal because I think they maybe only took 12 to 14, possibly 15. I can't quite remember, but they only took a small fraction to qualify, to then go to the trials so off Olympic years, you have world championships. And that was another kind of step in a path of, a gymnast life. And I remember qualifying for that going, here we are. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. But again, you don't reflect because it's like, this is hurting and this is hurting. And I just came off of stress fracture in my back and some other things were happening. And it was like, okay, I've got to get through practice. Let's get through practice so we can get to this meet. And I remember being on the competition floor, thinking back to 92 with what happened to a former teammate and going, I kind of feel like they already know who they want anyway. So why not just have fun? Enjoy this moment. I know it was in close to home. I think it was Virginia is where World Trials was. And I knew a lot of people from my hometown were coming, which was a little bit of pressure, but also exciting to a degree because it's on this big stage. And I think it was going to probably be on ESPN or something, which I didn't really know then, but just a way to prove myself. Let's just have fun. Let's go out and see what I can do and just enjoy it. And I ended up finishing 7th. And I think you'll enjoy this story because you will understand and it will be, Kara, that makes sense. But they were going to announce the team, the world team. And I was 7th. So I was an alternate. So for me, I had failed. I didn't make the team rather than being like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. Like I'm an alternate and I'm on the team. I was embarrassed a little bit and didn't want to be called on the floor with them, but I don't remember who it was in the USA gymnastics. And they said, go, like you're going, you go. And I was like, oh, I guess I need to go. The spotlights were on and everything. And I was announced with the team as an alternate. And my reaction was excitement, but also embarrassment.
In case you had any lingering questions about how Kara Meyer and I are fundamentally different, there it is. If I had been named as an alternate for any Olympic team, as long as I get a USA jersey, I am outside my mind. It would be the crowning achievement of my life. I would tell everyone I know I'm an alternate on the Olympics team. But I picture Kara, pissed off, chalking her grips, angry at herself for points she left on the table, wondering why she couldn't have done better. And that, friends, is the double-edged sword between high achievement and driving ourselves mad with perfectionism.
I was the alternate that was going to travel. And then after the fact, I was like, well, this is pretty cool. I get to go to Germany. I'll be able to travel with the team. I'll get experience and see what this is like. And then fortunately for USA Gymnastics, they petitioned Shannon Miller onto the team. She had some wrist issues and some injuries. And so she got petitioned onto the team and ended up going. And I got booted down to non-traveling alternate. And that was devastating. It was really upsetting because it was like, oh, here we go again. I did this. I competed, I did really well. And it was taken away from me. And so it was almost validation to what happened, 2 years prior. And it was like, all right, well, I guess we just keep plugging along. And then I had some injuries after that, which kind of set me back a lot more. And then I had to claw back from and fight back from and get over those things.
It had to have been devastating, and especially at a young age. Kara goes from thinking she had made the team as a traveling alternate to now being pushed off by an athlete who didn't even compete. But she didn't let that fester. She turned it into fuel that propelled her toward her next goal.
But once all of that happened, I think it was like, okay, well, let's refocus. What can I do now? And obviously, the Olympic team was 1.5 years, 2 years away. And it was like, okay, well, that's still my goal. Like I was on that floor with them. I was an alternate, but I was arm in arm with them. And another funny little story, when the magazine came out, my hand is over Larissa Fontaine's shoulder, I believe. She was 6 and I was 7, but they cut me out of the picture.
Oh, no.
And that was a little bit like, ooh, but my hand was still on the cover. So that was kind of cool. But it was one of those where, okay, I have to get back because this isn't over just yet. Yeah. And there were a lot of other factors that happened within our gym and all of that kind of stuff that it was a little tougher climb. But I did my best. I never really quite got back to that top form. I had another injury that came about right before some national meets and all that kind of stuff. So 96 didn't really pan out the way I thought it would, but then it was kind of on to college. Yeah. And I think I'm still on the right path here, but in club gymnastics, at least in my gym, college was your retirement. It was viewed as easy. It was viewed as a step down. So for me, it was a great way to get education paid for, but it was easy. And, so you're just going to kind of give up now and you're just going to train for college because you have your scholarship. So like, you're just going to do it, like that was kind of the mood around college gymnastics, right. Which once you get there, is not the case. So I feel like my visions for that were skewed differently than maybe other gymnasts in the country. I'm not sure because I wasn't them, but it was viewed as a step down. And yeah. So, coming into college, it was a little bit different.
Yeah. I have a complicated relationship with the Olympics now, between all the things that have happened in a variety of sports and with this newfound focus on athlete mental health. Back in the day, I used to celebrate like these are people who are so narrow in their focus, they've become the best in the world. And now as a healthcare provider, I'm like, these are people who are so narrowed in their focus that they've wished mental illness upon themselves. And what I used to celebrate on one hand is pathological in another. Like the people who are able to achieve at such a high level do so at their own, at the expense of their own physical and mental well-being oftentimes. And along with that, what I used to celebrate, I don't know who finished one position ahead of you or, there's for every story of winning and overcoming, there's a flip side of that story of an athlete who just missed out. Like for every bronze medalist, there's someone who finished 4th and their story never gets told. And they've worked just as hard, in some instances harder, and they don't have that piece of hardware to go home to have everybody fawn over. And so, like I say, it's a complicated relation. I still love the Olympics, but in a lot of ways, I realized the pathology of the Olympics. Did you watch the 96 games?
I did. I feel like I felt all sorts of emotions watching. Those were my teammates, I think, is the way I viewed it, because I competed with all of these ladies for essentially 4 years. We competed against each other. I always like to say we competed with each other because we were all kind of going through the same types of experiences as an elite athlete. And so I think I watched in silence. It was one of those where you didn't say, well, like, I'm going to watch tonight or anything. Like, I feel like I just kind of watched in silence, but I was so happy for them that I allowed myself to be in that moment. Like, I was so thrilled that every stuck landing, every roar of the crowd, I feel like I'm getting goosebumps right now thinking about it, is those were like my girls almost, even though like I didn't really know them personally like that well, we weren't friends, but just knowing you shared that experience all those years and watching them in Atlanta on home soil was so awesome. And it's like you could see the competition building and going. And of course, like the media, like all the announcers, and they build it up or whatever, but you can kind of see what's happening and kind of do the math and all of that. But it was awesome to watch. And I feel like once it was over, you still felt that like extreme joy for them, because you're so happy that you know what they went through to get there and they won. And it's like tear-filled, so excited, could barely sleep that night, wake up and go to the gym the next day to practice. And it was I'm feeling like this like down type of feeling when I'm trying to explain the feeling, but it just was a different thing showing up the next day. It was very hard for me. I wanted to take some time off. I just was burnt out, and this dream and this end goal like didn't happen, and that whole year didn't go very well for me. So I felt defeated. I felt like a failure and all the things, but I did enjoy watching.
Again, you see the difference between a high achiever and me. I would have been resentful, angry, bitter, probably wouldn't even have watched. I sure as heck wouldn't have cheered for those people because I'm petty. I'm working on that. But Kara didn't do that. She cheered for her teammates. She wanted them to be successful. And then she took that and used it again as fuel as she went back into the gym to prepare for the next chapter of her life.
It was exhilarating and so fun and so awesome to see all of them do so well, and not just the ones who have the high big names and whatever. It was like all of them, and the coach, like I just was so thrilled to watch them. But then I feel like the next day or so it was a little bit of like, I guess not a letdown, but a different type of feeling. But I'm so glad that I could experience it in the moment and forget all that stuff and just be there with them.
Yeah, I love that. And I think we both know you're an unashamed perfectionist. You muster some forgiveness for others that you would never, if someone had a bobble on beam, but they still hit their routine, you celebrate with them. If that happens for you, you are pissed off and,
absolutely.
The competitor in you wouldn't allow you to shrug that off for yourself, but the teammate in you does. And
right.
That speaks to that competitive fire that you have. So dreams unfulfilled or partially fulfilled, however you want to look at that, depending on the day, maybe you felt either proud or a little upset that things didn't go as they could have. I mean, knowing full well that you had what it took to compete at that level and it just didn't quite happen. You load up the U-Haul and you move to Tucson. So what is college gymnastics like for you? I know you were met with some pretty good success early in your career and often. I mean, it wasn't like you were just good that one year. What was competing in the Pac-10 like for you?
Well, I can tell you the first day, the first moment I stepped in our practice gym, I felt a renewed sense of maybe who I was and who I wanted to be possibly as a gymnast and what the future could look like. It was, I remember telling Bill Wright and our assistant coach and then our head coach at the time, gosh, I just feel so different. I feel new, almost as if I could be a brand new person. You know, you come in and all of these teammates are coming from all different parts of the country, and it's a fresh start. You can leave everything else behind and you can start fresh, because nobody really knows what you were like the first 18 years of your gymnastics life. And I just remember taking a deep breath. Of course, the smell was a little bit different in our gym than it was with thousands of other gymnasts, but just taking it felt fresh, I think is the word that I keep feeling right now as I'm I can picture the day. It just was a renewed sense of a deep breath, and I can do this. Yeah. Like, here we go. This is a new life for me. I have this opportunity. Like, let's see how it goes. And I think my goal was just to have fun.
And that is the sound of someone who is undone. An Olympic experience that could have left her angry and jaded, maybe even done with gymnastics, instead finds Kara 1,000+ miles to the west in Tucson, Arizona, ready to start a new life as a collegiate athlete, as a college student, as a new person, with a fresh start.
And to learn all these new teammates and learn these new coaches and see where it can take me. And, you know, being a freshman on a huge campus and taking in life and college classes and less practice time, you go from training 30 to 36 hours a week and you're only allowed 20 hours a week. It's fear a little bit too. Well, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to be able to train? And like, that's not a lot, but also refreshing to know I only have to train 20 hours a week. It just was refreshing. And competing within the Pac-10 at the time, there were a lot of big names that came from elite gymnastics that were in the Pac-10. A lot, you know, Mohini Bharadwaj, I hope I don't mess her name up, but was huge. I competed with her. I went to national training camps with her. Was like, oh my gosh, like now I have to compete against her again. And oh my goodness. And it just was a renewed sense of fun, I think. And competing on a team for your school is a huge honor, but also a little scary, because before, you know, I didn't compete for my high school. I competed for a club team. So there was a big difference where my classmates weren't coming to my competitions, whereas now fellow athletes are coming to watch you compete, which is a whole other, I felt, added pressure for me, since I am such a perfectionist. I was like, I have to prove myself to all these people that are coming. But it was just a really cool thing. As a freshman, you don't quite know what to expect. And so it's just this new sense of adventure. Yeah. And my goal was to just have fun. So I learned all of our team's floor routines. And that was fun for me to be like, oh my gosh, I know this and I know all these things. And it was great. I loved it. Silly dances all the time on the sidelines and just singing. And I feel like I was, I guess, the class clown, especially in the gym. I messed up or whatever, and everyone would laugh. I'm like, okay. Yeah. I loved that role.
Sometimes a change of scenery is all we need in order to be able to compete at our best, and Tucson suited Kara very well. She found love and support from new teammates, new coaches, new friends, and she reconnected with the sport she fell in love with as a 4-year-old flipping through her grocery store. It's like she was in love with gymnastics all over again. You mentioned Bill Ryden. He's another one on my list. I want to interview him. He was a highly successful gymnast himself, but probably the first or second time I ever walked in the same facility you're talking about, Bill said, my name's Bill Ryden. I'm the head coach. And I'm paraphrasing here, but he said something along the lines of, I run a rehabilitation center for recovering gymnasts. And he said, it's my goal to help put them back together physically and mentally and help them remember why they loved the sport. And I'm getting emotional just.
I know, I can see it. Absolutely. Me too.
But I mean, it was so foreign to me because in baseball, you're trying to get into the major leagues. In college gymnastics, it's like I'm paying for school. And Bill's whole goal was to be successful, but to put these young women back together and make them realize who they may have lost touch with along that way to that pursuit, because it can get so single focused that you neglect your physical, your mental health. And I just love the fact that he appreciated the gravity of that, because each of those athletes are now wives and mothers and workers. And Bill invested in that. And I really love that he approached it that way. So at U of A, you were two-time all-conference. You're in the Ring of Honor, which for those that don't know, I'm not sure how many. I couldn't Google to find out how many, but I remember walking in that facility and kind of like you mentioned at your previous gym, like there's the posters and your poster's up there now. Like you're one of the names and photos. It's the iconic end of the floor routine pose. After recording the episode, I realized I actually undersold it. In addition to being in the gym with her photo and her bio, Kara's leotard actually hangs from the rafters in McHale Center, where the basketball and volleyball teams play, along with the gymnastics team. It is a distinct honor, and one that only 2 gymnasts in school history have ever received. Tell me about your college gymnastics career. If you really had to summarize it in a minute, what would you say about your years competing as Wildcat?
Well, I'll take it back to Bill, since you brought it up, and I think that was beautifully said, and I got goosebumps listening, because it's absolutely true. He had patience, and he understood that a lot of us went through a lot to get to where we were. And it was our chance to regain our love of the sport, heal mentally and physically, which is extremely important. And I think to have that sense of what we had gone through 25 or however long it's been now, years ago, is amazing and absolutely awesome. And so I thank him regularly still to this day for having the patience and sticking with me, because I know I was burnt out. I know that I was still trying to find my way, and just the patience that he showed, because I think he knew the potential, and I think he knew my personality and knew that I was tough on myself. So he just had to sit back a little bit and just let me do my thing. And I did. I found my way. I hated practice. I was not fond of practice. And I feel like it's because I couldn't prove myself, really. And I didn't know how to kind of go through things a little bit. And freshman year, I was fresh. And my job was to go out there and do my best every single meet. And so I think my first meet, I was in the lineup on 2 events, and I was exhibitioning on the other 2 or something like that. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't make lineup, because that's like the big thing that you want to do. And I went out and competed, and I think, I don't know, but I think I shocked my teammates and my coaches, because I was a different person. When I hit the competition floor, I just competed. Mm-hmm. That's where I was meant to be, because that's where I could prove myself. And that's where all of my energy went. And so I had a really great freshman season. But again, it goes so quickly. You're competing every single weekend, whereas before you'd have a meet, maybe 2 meets a month, possibly. So it went so quickly, and I didn't really get to absorb it, but I qualified to NCAA championships my freshman year. And I was like, okay, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. Like, this isn't just like, oh, yay, good job, congratulations. Like, this is what I'm supposed to do. It was, I didn't think felt great that our team wasn't there with us. That was a whole different avenue to take. And so that was a goal the next year. Okay, we have to get our team there. And that was the goal the next 3 years, was we need to get our team there, because we're good enough and we can get there. And so I feel like I just went into every year wanting to get a little bit better. You know, I kind of went through a little bit of a sophomore slump, which was really, really tough. And I think you were there for that. Wasn't that your first year with us? Yes. And it was tough. I didn't fall at all. I fell one time my freshman year on beam, one fall out of my whole freshman campaign, and maybe twice. But sophomore year, it was a struggle, and trying to navigate all of that and just feeling like a failure every single weekend was really tough. But Bill kept putting me in the lineup. He kept putting me out on the floor, kept giving me chance after chance, when I can guarantee my teammates are like, what is she doing in the lineup again? But I think he knew what he was doing and was trying to get me to believe in myself again and to gain that confidence. I made it through the year. Junior year, I got a little bit better again. And then by senior year, we were awesome. I think we missed NCAAs by a tenth or two, which was so devastating because we had worked so hard. It was finally our time. And I'm picturing our picture after the meet right now at Nebraska. And it was just devastating because we had worked our butts off and trained so hard, and we competed so hard, and we were, just a bobble or whatever. And of course, blamed myself because I think I had a bobble on beam or whatever it was, and felt like, oh my gosh, if I would have just done this, we could have been there. And then almost felt guilty that I qualified as an individual again, to go in the all around. And of course, I'm happy and I'm proud, but it stung because my family wasn't with me. We weren't there as a group, as a team. So NCAAs was kind of tough because you just didn't have your people behind you. But, I gave it my all and I did my best, and still never got that All-American behind my name. And that will stick with me forever. But I'm slowly at age 44 becoming proud of myself because my picture's hanging in our practice gym. And because I am in the Ring of Honor in McHale Center with women's volleyball and men's basketball and women's basketball.
You heard it. There's still a tinge of a little bit of regret, perhaps, for things left undone, whether that was an Olympic team or All-America honor. But at the same time, there's a reluctant acceptance, a recognition that she's still done great things, that she didn't fall apart. She moved on, and she's turned that into success in other parts of life.
And my kids see my name there when we go to gymnastics meets or men's basketball games, and any sporting event that's in McHale, they see my name. That, I think, is where it turned for me to finally absorb it and begin to be proud of myself and to say, okay, I've left a little bit of a legacy behind for my kids to go, that's my mom, and she was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And I had heard someone from my hometown, I believe, had moved out here, and they had visitors in town, and they made their way down to McHale Center to see my name. Wow. And my mom maybe have told me that story. I can't quite remember, but I was like, really? They went down to see my name? Like, people, I didn't think anyone knew anything like that. So slowly but surely, I'm coming to be proud of my accomplishments. And someday I will get there and bring it up in a conversation.
Yeah, right. Well, it has to be bittersweet to know that the mentality that drove you to that level of success also kind of prohibited you from enjoying it along the way. You never really had a chance to drink in the fact that you're doing something that, I don't know, how many little girls compete in gymnastics and how many make the Olympic team? I mean, statistically speaking, those then 7 spots were probably the hardest, most sought after and political spots in all of sport, right? Like, even if you qualified, you weren't guaranteed to qualify because they might just stick somebody in there anyway, right? And so without ever really having the license or feeling like you had earned the right to drink that in, how did that conclusion of your U of A career sit with you? Were you satisfied, or did you feel like you had left some things undone?
Absolutely left. Like, there were some things left undone. 100%. Just felt like I just need more time. And now I'm going to get emotional. But for sure, like, you think, gosh, what if I just had one more year or one more meet or whatever it would be? It's one of those with gymnastics, when you're done, you're done. Thankfully and fortunately, I ended at NCAAs. And I didn't have an injury that ended my career, where I couldn't imagine if that was the way things, like, not that I got to choose, but my career ended when season was over. Mm-hmm. And so in a sense, that was a little bit of closure because it's coming. But again, I was in the best shape of my life. I was in a great place in my life where I was like, I still have so much more to give, and it's over. I believe I played around in the gym for a practice or two. Bill put me in the spotting belt, and I did a bunch of skills that I hadn't done in years that I used to do maybe 10 years prior in club, and just to live it up a little bit and to go, okay, I did this one last time. So I'm thankful I had that time as well, but I was not ready for it to be over. Mm-hmm. gymnastics was my identity. No matter how much I kept telling everyone, oh, it's just something I do. It's like a habit. It's like my job. It was my identity. And you don't realize how much something defines you until it's no longer, quote unquote, you anymore. Yeah. And now you're just Kara Fry. You are just your name, and there's no hyphen gymnastics after it. Mm-hmm. And that was a very, very tough thing for me to deal with for a few years, actually. But
did you consider anything else? Like, I know World University Games, or maybe even a career in performing arts like Cirque or other things. Like, were those ever real considerations, or did you just decide after NCAA's that chapter's closed and it's on to the next thing?
A little bit. I had thought about World University Games. I think Bill had talked about it. I don't remember why we didn't pursue that. There must have been a time frame issue. Cirque, definitely. I had so many teammates that teammates from club or whatever that were pursuing that. And I was like, that would be absolutely amazing. But I had the factor of my boyfriend at the time, now my husband, who he had signed a contract and he was playing professional baseball. And so I wanted to be as supportive as I could be for him. And I wanted to be able to see him. So if I was in Cirque or if I was in Vegas doing a show or traveling, I wouldn't be able to do that. And so I made a decision to kind of go on a path or whatever it was that I could include this person in my life, to where I never felt comfortable making a decision just for me. I have always included other people in my decisions, which they're good or bad. That's just who I am. And so I decided I wanted to be supportive of him, and finished my 5th year of college, and we got engaged. I was volunteer coaching, which I thought that was going to be my path. You know, if I can just stay at Arizona at some point and coach, I wanted to stay in the sport, and it just was my happy place at the time. And I didn't want to give it up. I didn't want to cut that cord yet. So I volunteer coached, I think, for a couple years, and good or bad, it maybe just wasn't for me at the time. I think I needed to let go fully. I needed to cut that cord, and pursue life outside of gymnastics, and just give myself a break possibly from it.
You see this time and time again, whether it's athletes or artists, those that have spent their entire lives pursuing this singular goal have such a difficult time giving it up. It's the reason I went into athletic training. For Kara, that season in life began to close, and opportunities in coaching never really materialized. So she found herself looking for other opportunities to serve and to connect. So this thing that's been, if not your entire identity, a part of your life, almost as long as you can remember, from 4.5 on, is suddenly over. Turn the page. What did that feel like?
It was very lonely. It was and scary. Actually, it was lonely and scary. You didn't really talk about it. There was no, what do you do after? It was so much focus on what you're doing now that there wasn't a lot of talk about what you're going to do after. I mean, you would joke around, be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be able to walk, or I'm going to be able to wake up in the morning and my body won't hurt, which, newsflash for any former athletes or almost former athletes out there, like, you're just always going to hurt a little bit, and you just have to accept it, and it's okay. But, those were the jokes. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to do this, or I can't wait to do whatever I want. And in reality, it's like, wait, I can do whatever I want? I don't know what that means. Like, you go on a vacation and there's no itinerary. I don't know what to do. Are we supposed to have a team meeting? Those things, it's silly, but it's so like it happened where you're lost almost. Forgoing your whole life of being told what to do and where to be, to now almost freedom, is a scary, weird thing. I was terrified that I was going to get out of shape. I think that's so ingrained as athletes, possibly, and as gymnasts especially. I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I can't get out of shape, and fearful of it. And so I changed the way I was eating a little bit, and just making sure I was putting clean things. And here it was my whole life going, I can't wait to eat whatever I want. And now I'm almost being afraid to do so. Newsflash, I still did eat whatever I wanted, but it just was this weird dynamic of all of the things you were looking forward to are now almost scary. And you just take it day to day. My focus was on Mike and his career and being supportive. I joke that I'm the best jockstrap there is because I'm an athletic supporter, and I'm on it. I will cheer. I'll be there, whatever you need. I'm there for you. And that's almost the identity I took, and I just lived. I just lived because I didn't know what else to do. And so you get your job and you just kind of live your life and try not to put expectations because you don't want to set yourself up to fail.
Right. And I think you've hit the nail on the head several times. Like, you were so purpose driven for a given day or a given task that maybe you didn't allow yourself to see the bigger picture. And I'm curious, during this season of your life, your relationship, your young marriage, I mean, you had gone from being in the conversation on the world stage as an athlete yourself to now being Mike Meyer's wife, player, or eventually coach Mike Meyer's wife. What did that do to you mentally? How did you deal with from being a world-class athlete to being athlete adjacent?
It was really tough. And I remember a conversation I had with my mom because I didn't know how to deal with it. I felt like a horrible person because here it's this person I love and we were to be married or getting married, and I'm annoyed and bitter that he's still living his dream and doing something he absolutely loves, and mine was just done. And to be completely honest, and he will agree with you, I was the better athlete. I was, a world-class gymnast, and it's still hard for me to say that, but, and he was a minor league baseball player.
Kara was right. As talented as her husband Mike was, having earned a scholarship as a Division I baseball player, the nature of his sport meant he still had the potential to play professionally, whether in the minors or the majors. Meanwhile, Kara's career was over. Simply due to the nature of gymnastics, there was nowhere for her to go. She found herself in the tough position of having to be the supportive fiancé and eventually wife as her husband pursued his dreams while hers were done.
And so in my eyes, I was like, gosh, I was better than you. And you're still playing. Like, that's not fair. And so it was, I called my mom and I'm like, Mom, this just isn't fair. Like, I just, it was almost I needed to get it out because it was what I was feeling. But also, I think I was forgetting that just because I wasn't a gymnast anymore doesn't mean that stuff doesn't come with me, and that I can't honor it and validate it in myself. And also be like, I can be two things at once. Right. I can still be that person, but also be supportive and for my friends. And, we had friends that were still playing and everything, and be supportive of them and super happy for them. But it was a tough thing, but I dove right into that. Whatever I can do to make your dream come true, because I know what you've put into your sport and I know what it takes and I know what it's still taking on you, that my job is to be your jockstrap. And I'm going to be your supporter, and I'm going to do whatever I can to help you on your journey. And I think I really dove into that, and that was my path, and it was my passion. And I mean, he's still doing it today. And I think a lot of that has to do with my support. And so I feel like that part of my journey is still going, but it's part of who I am. And so I really, since I absorbed it and went with it, I think it was the right path for me.
Well, I will tell you from a third party's opinion, if they gave gold medals for coaches' wives, you would definitely be on the top of the podium because that's a tough life. I mean, how many months at a time as a player or as a coach has he gone? And you still have family that you have to take care of. I mean, the kids don't evaporate when he goes away to spring training. Like, they're still there. There's still meals to be fed and school errands to run. And so I really applaud your efforts for that. So you finish with your bachelor's degree. You and Mike get married. Kind of fast forward, what happens between then and now?
Well, we decided we didn't want to have kids right away because he was still playing baseball, and I did not want to be a single mom during seasons. So we waited until we were 30, which a lot of people were going, hello, when are you guys going to start a family and have kids? So we were both 30 when we had our first, and I was in a job where it wasn't a career. because that's not what I wanted for myself. I wanted to be able to be present for my kids, and I wanted to be able to be a good mom. And in my mind, if I had a quote unquote career, I wouldn't be able to do both. And that was at that time frame of my mind. So I had a job that I could get our medical benefits, and we paid our bills, and he pursued his coaching career, which was great. And my purpose when my daughter was born, I think, grew again. That's when I said, okay, this is now my goal. This is now my thing, is to be the best mom and provider and all of those things for this child. And so I feel like my purpose kind of was born again, which is great. It gave me something else to kind of focus on, good or bad. Sometimes I went a little bit much, but that's my personality. I am a perfectionist, and I've been told by many professionals and people that chill out, it's okay. But that wasn't my path. I don't know how to not to be a perfectionist. And so what I've done lately is validate that and say, okay, this is who you are, but that's not realistic. So what are you going to do here? And that's what it is. So my husband is still coaching. He's still managing. I'm an independent team in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So he leaves at the end of April, and he comes back when season's over, and which is typically mid-September. And I work and take care of the kids in the summer times, and we do our best, and we love to go watch him. We get to visit at least once a summertime. I try to go for a couple weeks just so the kids can see their dad and we can watch him in action. And I still love it to this day, seeing him on the field, because I know he's living his best life, and that fulfills me as much as I think it fulfills him as well.
Yeah. And how good does he look in that uniform? Right. All right.
I try to get him some good shoes and some good sneakers every year. So
So what do your days look like? You kind of alluded to this. Tell me a little bit about your current role and what your day-to-day looks like at this stage of your career.
So I am the insurance coordinator, bill payer at the University of Arizona in the athletic training room. Any bill or invoice or anything that has to do with our athletes or our facilities comes my way. I make sure everything's billed properly and all that good stuff. But I feel like my favorite perk of my job is seeing the student athletes. And I have been deemed the quote unquote mentor for our women's gymnastics team, which I absolutely love. I like to say, I used to say that I was their big sister, but now I'm a little older. So it's more like mom, which I'm totally fine with. And it has really, I think, given me another sense of purpose, is to be an ear and a shoulder for them. They know they can come to me and I will understand, because I was through it and I was a gymnast. And it's a comfort for them that they don't have to start over and explain everything. They can come and just talk about whatever it is, whether it's a good thing or something they're struggling with. They can come to me and they know I'm going to get it. And they know that I'm going to be there for them.
Yeah. And
it has been so rewarding. And when they're out on the competition floor, and sometimes I'm down on the floor for the meets, and I just throw the hands in the air when they land, or I give a wink or a high five. I get goosebumps. It's almost as if they're my kids too, almost, even though they're adults, but I get such pride watching them, and it's an honor to be able to give back in that way. I don't always like to use the term give back, but I do know I'm trying to validate that I have so much that I can give back, that I'm trying to honor that and believe it, so that I can be for them what I maybe needed back in my day. Yeah. And it's such an awesome thing.
So I spent 2 years as the athletic trainer with the Arizona Wildcats gymnastics team, and I would have killed to have had a resource like you to refer you and your teammates to. We just didn't have that. And it was an era devoid of mental health care for people in general, but athletes for sure. And we've gotten better. And I mean, you see the inner workings of athletics and how mental health has become what it should have been all along. But just to have a resource like I mean, you've got the street cred. Gymnasts are a notoriously untrusting bunch because to show weakness is, it's a vulnerability and that can be exploited. And so just having a resource like you for those young athletes, maybe they don't take the time to recognize it, but it's fantastic. So we're wrapping up. I want to be respectful of your time. What advice would you give a little girl who's in pursuit of your childhood dreams?
I always feel like it's not a tough question. I just kind of sometimes feel like I don't know how to narrow it down because I want to speak to her heart more than anything. Be true to who you are. Always use your voice, but pursue your passions, whatever it is. And, it's not so much about proving yourself to other people. It is about pursuing your passions and what you love about yourself and just setting your goals as little as you want. It doesn't have to be Olympics. It doesn't have to be a scholarship. As long as you are pursuing who you want to be and you are doing exactly what you want to do, and just keep moving forward, keep taking those steps forward, and don't allow other people or other influences deter you from that, from your dreams and from your thoughts. And I know there could be a lot of athletes out there who go, but I don't know what I want to do. I don't have a dream. I don't have like a big goal. That's okay too. Just continue being who you are feeling in that moment and just enjoy yourself. And don't be so hard on yourself. For all the perfectionists out there, it's a rough life. I get it. I still to this day am my worst critic, but also validate it. Say, okay, this is who I am. And it doesn't seem like it's going to change anytime soon, but give yourself a break every once in a while and maybe give yourself a hug. Because I tell you what, Toby, I remember my first 9-9 routine. And I'm going to give you a shout out because it is my all-time favorite memory of you is coming. I believe we were at Oregon State and I had finished my beam routine or whatever. And everyone says beam's my best event and all of that, but landed, score was flash 9-9. And you were the first person to turn around, and I will never forget the look on your face and that big bear hug that came at me. And it was like, almost, we did it. Like we finally did it. And on the road at Oregon State, like it was absolutely amazing. And so when I just said, give yourself a hug every once in a while, that's what I pictured, because that moment for me was, and I don't know if you remember it or whatever it is, but that was a big moment for me, was getting that hug. And it was almost a validation.
I absolutely do remember that hug. I was so proud of Kara for putting together a great routine for sure. But more than that, I was proud of the strength and the resolve and the leadership that she showed.
You knew what that meant. Mm-hmm. And so being that Toby hug at the end of a routine for yourself every once in a while, just do it.
That's awesome. This one may be a little tougher. What advice would you give younger you?
That is a tough one, because there's so many me's that I would love to talk to. I think I'm going to pick, let's say, 16-year-old Kara, which is so weird to use your name like that, but I'm going to talk to 16-year-old me who is sitting on the sidelines, who can't compete because they're injured, came off being 7th in the country, being embarrassed because your geometry teacher pointed out that he saw you on ESPN the night before, and say, be proud of yourself. Love yourself. Use your voice. Speak up for yourself. Be so happy and enjoy what you're going through. You're experiencing so much more now than what some people experience in a whole lifetime. You're traveling, you're competing at the top of your sport. Enjoy it and realize that you're awesome. And it's okay to be proud of yourself. And it's okay to acknowledge your failures, but also understand that your failures are still wins, even if you can't see it at the moment.
Yeah.
But most importantly, love yourself, like yourself, and use your voice.
Yeah. That's great advice, young Carrie. You need to listen up. Next to last question. Are you glad you took the ride? Are you glad you pursued those big dreams and that your life has ended up where it has? Or would you do it differently if you had another go at it?
100%. I'm glad I took the ride. It has shaped me into the human being that I am. All of the beings that I've taken with me, the perfectionist, the just growing so much from the failures and from the low points and coming out on top always, even though I don't feel like I have, but looking back and reflecting on this journey that I've taken since I was 4 and I stepped in that YMCA. I don't think I would change anything. And I've been through a lot, but it has shaped who I am. It has made me stronger. It has made me extremely resilient. And I don't approach life right now as I can't get through this. I don't even think about that. You just go. You just push through and you live life. There's no thinking about it. You just go, because that's what I have done my whole life. Is you might see all these things flashing at your face or coming at you from all angles, and you go, okay, cool, great, got it, see it, whatever, and you just go, because there's no reason to stop. There's no reason to not continue to move forward and live your life, because we're blessed with the life that we have. Yeah. And to not honor that and to not do your best every day, to me, would obviously feel like I'm failing. I don't like to fail.
Yeah, for sure. All right, last question. What for you remains undone?
What remains undone? Well, a lot of things that remain undone, I won't ever be able to finish or accomplish. I think I had a goal of being an All-American. That will always be undone, but I'm okay with it, because I know I did my best at that time. And I persevered through so much that just a name or another title at the end of my name won't define who I am, because I know that I persevered and I went through all of the things I did, and I did the best I could. So I feel like I'm slowly getting to peace with that. I just feel like I still haven't peaked yet in certain areas of my life. So I feel like maybe that's my undone. I feel like there's still something out there that I will contribute. I don't know what that is yet. Maybe I don't even know what it could be. Like, I'm not even going to try to dream up of what it possibly could be, but there still feels like there's something I can contribute. I love that there could still be a possibility out there, because I don't want to feel like this is it. And so maybe the feeling of undone isn't such a bad thing, because you still have life and you still have things left to give.
Goosebumps in my chair as I'm listening and editing this podcast right now. Carrie hits the nail right on the head. That's what becoming undone is all about. You still have life in you. You still have something left to give.
And so maybe being undone isn't so bad, that it gives you that extra thing, you know?
Absolutely. Carrie, it has been my distinct pleasure to have had this conversation with you. I thank you so much for your time. You've been so gracious, and I appreciate just the chance to reconnect, if nothing else. But I'm truly thankful for this. It means a lot.
Absolutely, Toby. I would jump through hoops and over the moon and everything for you. You are such a special human being, and you have so much to give. And I am beyond thrilled that I could be here and that you asked me to do this. It's absolutely amazing. Thank you.
From Olympic hopeful to successful collegiate gymnast to now wife, mother, career woman, mentor, Carefry Meyer has known success at every level of her life. The hard part for her to see through her perfectionism is the fact that she's had that impact, that she's been successful, that she's helped people every step of the way. I hope you, like me, have taken inspiration from her story and recognize that just because one season of our life is over doesn't mean that the story has to end. Special thanks to Carefry Meyer for joining us today for episode 2 on Becoming Undone. Becoming Undone is a Nitro Hype creative production written and produced by me, Toby Brooks. If you or someone you know has a story of resilience and victory to share for the show, please contact me at undonepodcast.com. Becoming Undone can be heard on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever else you get your podcasts. Till next time, everybody, keep getting better.